Hi. This session is about project management and process management, the relationship thereof and the confusion thereof, and the opportunities for cross-fertilizing two communities that have tended to be fairly isolated, thus an important loss of knowledge, I think. The notions I want to discuss: project management, then process management, temporary organization, improvement and learning, work breakdown structure versus functional analysis system technique, for example. It's not a technical course. It wants to compare two domains and come with the beginning, if you like, the seed of an integrative theory of it, and hopefully leave you with a bit clearer picture of what these two entities are and the continuum in between them. PMI, Project Management Institute, is probably, is quite certainly, I think, the best known organization in the field, structuring professional and developing the project management body of knowledge for many years. Very well organized, many graduates, many people are being certified by this organization and regularly getting their annual training to renew and maintain their level of proficiency in project management. So from the PMBOK, a project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. Unique, temporary. It means it has a beginning, it has an end. The end is reached when the objective has been reached or the project is somehow terminated. Project management is the application of knowledge to project management, essentially. And the application of knowledge requires the effective management of the project management process. Now, this could be confusing if you don't define process. So they define process as a set of interrelated actions and activities performed to create a pre-specified product, service, or result. Pre-specified, not unique, thus repetitive. The project manager needs to consider organizational process assets. So there's project management process per se, ensure the effective flow of the process, and product-oriented processes to create specify and create the project's product. Now, when we have two communities like this, they each tend to define their own domain and define the others as well. Not necessarily the way the others would define themselves. Typically, they tend to simplify the other. The process management community simplifies project management. I was once in a cocktail with a project management colleague, and we had an executive with us asking us, hey, by the way, what's the difference between a project and a process? And my colleague from project management says, well, a process is a project that we repeat. So, tongue-in-cheek, I said, well, a project is a process that you do only once. And we laughed. Certainly, I'm sure that the executive left nonplussed from all this. So here it is. This is the issue. Now you know the definition that I've used of processes and where they fit in organizations. So let's now address this comparison and see where we can reconcile these two things, or at least locate them in a mental model that seems to have some cohesion to it. Maybe start with personal examples. We do projects, we do processes individually as well, just as organizations do. Learn to play the piano. It's got to be once in a lifetime. It's got to be unique. I'm sure nobody wants to learn to play the piano more than once. You may spend your life at it, but it's a unique endeavor. Thus, a project. You learn the scales. You practice your scales. So obviously practicing scales is a process within that project. That it will be repetitive, and if you have children learning that, you know, until, you know, it repeats itself. No, 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 no. Well, process, that bit I think is fairly clear. However, imagine that you would say, well, if you want to learn the piano, all that matters is as quick as possible, with least effort, least resources as possible, achieve the highest level of proficiency in piano playing. The how doesn't matter, as long as it produces the result. Different perspective. Let's say that I want to learn several instruments, and the piano is the first one. Then I want to learn the harpsichord, and I want to learn other keyboard related instruments. Then, learning the first instrument, learning the second, learning the third, I could view that as a process. Vastly different, but with commonalities. And if I undertake to learn the piano as a first instrument, then the how will matter. If I focus on the how, if I try and find exactly what is the best combination of ways to achieve the end, the second instrument that I learn, I may learn better, faster, cheaper, reach higher level, and so on. It's a question of mindset. How do you frame it? Let's take second example. Learn to play tennis. We learn once. Again, tennis, you may spend all your life at it. It's a set of processes that will be repetitive in there, like learn how to serve, learn how to move up to the net and back. Those processes you practice until practice makes perfect. There are clearly processes in the sense of PMI, of repetitive processes. But again, if I say I want to learn several racket sport, I'll go to badminton, then I'll go to ping pong, then certainly spending a part of my mental energy looking at the way I do things as I am reaching the goal, looking at the path, and from one sport to the next, trying to improve on that path. Then I would be learning, and the how would matter as well as the result. In fact, the how may even matter more than the result. Because if my first result is not that great, but I learned something fundamental that will make the other two sports learn faster, better, reaching higher level, then I'm a learning person. So let's move this beginning of argument to the field of business, and to avoid getting into complex examples that are different. I use the same examples that I have used in previous videos. You may recall this one. I will not repeat the complete example, but the situation was that in Switzerland of a little girl falling into a pond. That's in chapter 10, by the way, on a high-level view of the design methodology. So, team emergency call, they eventually find the poor little girl, clinically dead at that time, carrying her hospital, and all the processes that I described in the other video, with a host of experts coming in, connecting with one another, and eventually resuscitating the girl. Is this a project? Is this a process? Depends on how you frame it. I would say it used to be project. In the Alps, it does happen quite several times a year, but they would treat that as projects, not learning from one to the other. At some point they said, well, this is a process. Let's define it and find where various experts have to connect and the way they have to connect for everything to happen. Time is of the essence. A mistake, a missed technique a variable that is misunderstood or set, if you like, will result in failure. So when they saw it as a process, as a repetitive process, they succeeded. Not to say that you should always see things as processes, but illustrations. I also, in the same video, use the example of a cancer treatment case. Some of them are routine, follow all the same step more or less. Some of them are vastly different and challenges all the expert to find a different way to use the MRI technique differently, to have the radiologist interact with the nucleus and the and other experts in different ways, in unique ways, and maybe try something new. At what point does it become not unique and temporary? In fact, and let's carry on. A few more examples. I've used protection with the example of a UK family being wrongly accused of sexual abuse. Now, the case description that I have is 15 pages long, quite unique. All sorts of. Is that temporary? And those people connect. The social worker find a way to interact with this specific doctor, with this specific lawyer, and this nurse, and the police, and so on. There is a temporary nature. Is this a project in this sense, or is it a process? And the last example I gave in that video, you may recall, was the Hyatt, Kansas City Hyatt. The walkway fall down and the more than 100 deaths. Again, it's a building a new hotel. It's a project, but certainly Hyatt builds many hotels. If they choose to see this, and I'm quite sure they do, as a process, each unit, each hotel that they built being an instantiation of that process, with if some efforts are put into analyzing cause and effect, the way you do things with the kind of results you get, then as they go, they characterize the process. They find the critical variable to it. They find better ways to avoid mistake, pokayokis, and so on. And of course, this is the topic of this book in general. So, in short, complex service delivery systems, where do they fit in the picture? If you build houses, maybe they're perfectly identical. You may call them project, but it's certainly a process. And one customer would like would like some variant on the way his roofing is done. Then there's changes and there's new technologies at times to be adopted for a special project. We have, you see the trend, what I'm getting at here. A system of processes involving experts from various fields, various organizational units, delivering their capabilities and interacting to create, to co-produce value. Professional services are the highest value-added services we have in our advanced economies, and they fit that description. So it is not an isolated case I'm talking about. I'm talking more of the rule in advanced society nowadays. Does it matter if we classify it, if we say this is a project, this is a process? Why are we splitting hairs here? Sex of angels kind of thing? It does matter. First of all, classification is the beginning of knowledge. If it is only temporary, all that matters is result. If you're going to do it again in one form or another, there's some commonality between instantiation A, instantiation B, developing software. Think CMMI, for example. Then learning at every instantiation, so that it improves over time, is critical to strategic advantage. It develops the ability to learn from one instantiation to another, and to keep you one step ahead of your competition. Processes, some are standard, some are non-standard. Projects, some are quite similar, building houses, some are truly unique. There are some truly unique endeavors. And very often, one person's project is another person's process. If I want to climb the Everest, if I'm not a mountain climber, I will only do that once. But certainly the Sherpas, for them it is certainly a process. And if they want to help me do it, it is a process as well. It's not black and white. It's all relative. Perspective matters. Context. So this is the zone of overlap, and we should not really be discussing just as if the world was black and white, but the world is gray. Open up our mind and realize that the two fields, if you're dealing with something here, you should not relate just to one or the two fields, but try to integrate. And I'm going to do that right here. Let's look at a number of examples. I won't go through the whole thing. You hopefully have the slide. From the health industry, a medical first, truly unique. Flu shot, truly repetitive. Legal Enron defense has to be truly unique, even though it has commonality with another, I'm sure, another complex case. Traffic offense certainly is very repetitive. In finance, organizing a leverage buyout or IPO. For the company in question, it may be a project. For the consultants doing it, lawyers and the notaries and the tax specialists, it is a process. In marketing, creating a new distribution network for the first time, maybe once in a lifetime, once in an organizational lifetime. And yet for some consultants it's repetitive, and so on. So you see, the way most executives and most academics tend to treat these things, activities are either operational or administrative. They are either truly unique or truly repetitive. Black and white division. Building the Olympic Stadium, operational, unique. Moving HQ to another country, truly unique and administrative. Truly repetitive and operational, airport intake process. Truly repetitive, thousands a day. And hire a barista in a Starbucks or any other coffee shop is administrative and repetitive. Not to say that it's not important. Operations management tend to be categorized, if you like, pigeonholed in that niche. Process management tend to be pigeonholed. Here, again, the title here is A Tale of Two Communities, but there's really three communities involved if you look at it. And project management is truly unique. In fact, what I'm saying is that most of the world is gray. Let's be eclectic. Pick the best tool, the best notions, the best framing for the endeavor at hand, and for the long-term purpose that we have, for the mission of the organization. Here are some tools now. Defining inputs, output, transformation. We use SciPoc or SciTalk Smart. Projects have a definition of scope. I'll come back to this one in a second. The raison d'etre of the project, of the process, is a project mission or a process mission. Describe the flow, well, it's a per CPM, and in processes it's mapping. Risk register to manage risk in project, FMEA in processes. So you see, there's quite a bit of parallel between projects and processes, and yet the two communities having evolved quite independently. Some of the tools may be best suited to some situations than others. So knowing both and not being dogmatic about it, eclectic, is the way to go. Let's take work breakdown structure. How do you decompose work into components? In the process culture, the process community, you do a functional analysis. In the project community, you do a work breakdown structure. They're quite similar in many ways, except since they've evolved, there are two breeds that have evolved differently. In the word breakdown structure, you have deliverables that you break down. In the process idea, you have actions. You focus on the functionality, which are verbs. And it's interesting to compare, and let's take a simple example. Again, war analogy, U.S. War of Independence. This is the Siege of Boston. The colonists all around the British are in Boston, and ships and the fleet is outside feeding it and being the source of supply to the isolated, besieged city. Now you can say, if you're George Washington at the time, well, this is a project. I'm not going to protect and keep the English there many times. It's a one-time thing. Block the English, retake Boston. Or you can say, well, it's really our first mission together in this new army with people from the northern states and people from the southern states who are quite different cultures in many ways. The colonies are quite different. And he's trying to create an army. And he, of course, knows that the British are coming from the sea. They're very likely to attack New York afterwards, and then Yorktown, and then go down. So defending a maritime city, a coastal city, against an invading fleet, British Army, may be viewed as a process. And thus you should, as you defend them, find the best way to get this army to work together in that environment and make sure, even though New York is quite different from Boston, and so is Yorktown, try to improve from one to the other, learn and become better at it. So this would be a word breakdown structure of the Siege of Boston. What do you have to deliver? You have to deliver pressure on the Navy, strategy, a siege, pressure on the Army, so that in the end they leave. How do you put pressure on the Army? Well, you shell them and you make incursions. How do you make incursions? What are the deliverables? Training, tactics, and recruits. Siege. How do you set siege? Well, you need to deliver infrastructure, troop location, command and control. How do you, and so on. You see deliverables, word breakdown structure here. We could do the same thing using a fast diagram, except they would all be verb. Set siege, put pressure on the Army, formulate strategy, put pressure on the Navy. I feel that the verb, the action verb, makes it more active. In a sense, it focuses on the action more than on the result. You do need the two, of course, but it does introduce the balance of the intent. It does focus the attention on the intent of understanding the action and what makes it produce the result that it does, characterizing the process. Now, of course, this project of the Siege of Boston can be broken down into processes in a typical PMI fashion. And you could say that withdrawing in good order, just as in tennis, serving, or in piano, practicing your scales, withdrawing in good order is a sub-process that you need to put into action to defend Boston. And there you have a fast diagram. How do you withdraw in good order? Prepare a new line of defense, slow down the enemy, carry the wounded, decide on a new line of defense, assign roles, blah, 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 and so on. And you go with verbs and you have a sub-process. This is more classical process analysis. And it fits very well as such in the PMI, PM Buck model. Two tools. So, concluding. Let me propose a tree structure to clarify the discussion and capture some of the discussion that we've had. A major endeavor arises. Have we ever done this or anything like this before? No. Are we likely to do anything like this ever again? This is a project in the strictest sense of the word. Results is the only thing that matter. If we've never done it, but we are likely to do it again, then this is a new process. We've never done it, so we certainly have to design it, break it down, but we're going to do it again. So we now have the dual objective of reaching the results, and as we do so, starting to characterize the process so that the next instantiation is better. Have we ever done this? Yes. Are we likely to do anything like this ever again? No. Okay. Have we captured the knowledge when we did it the first time? Yes, well, take what you have already, adapt it, and it is a repetition of a process that you won't do again. Have we captured the knowledge? No. We have done this, we haven't captured the knowledge, we're not likely to repeat it. So this is a project. If we have captured the knowledge, then this is a process. If we have not, and if we are likely to do it again, then this is a new process. Designing a new process involves, as you know from the design methodology, something that does not exist, understanding the customer activity cycle, the DCDV methodology of Chapter 10. So that sort of summarizes part of the argument. And concluding thoughts. Truly unique transformations and perfectly repetitive one exist, but they are certainly not the mainstream. There is a lot in between that we tend to lump with one or the other, losing opportunities for learning on the way. Whether something is temporary or not often depends on the way you choose to frame it. All transformative processes can be classified along a spectrum linking the two extremes. It is not a black and white, it is not a dichotomy, it is a continuum. Treating a transformation as either a project or a process is often a matter of choice, rather than the correct dogmatic application of a typology. Criteria is really what are we trying to do. They are not well defined, but the criteria are certainly based on the learning organization and the strategy to process connection, which is my topic in general. Current quasi-dogmatic edicts by one community or the other that tends to simplify the other, trivialize the other, really are non-productive. Minimally, there is much confusion, meaning there's much opportunity if we can clear some of the confusion. Treating them as distinct, loosely connected domains is, again, counterproductive. And I'm proposing, in fact, I am involved in trying to capture the knowledge that I'm presenting here in a paper that I will share. I've already shared this with the project management community and I'm moving forward with it. Let's see it as an opportunity where two rich bodies of knowledge are underutilized and poorly utilized. This will conclude the video. Thank you for your attention.